Hello, everybody, and welcome to this very exciting webinar where we will be looking back at some of the wild and wonderful moments of social media in 2024. As we all know, this year has been somewhat crazy in terms of social media. The volume of content is off the chart. Trends have been rising and falling at a million miles an hour, and consumer behavior is changing at a rapid rate, and we're going to talk about it all. I am joined by an incredible panel of social media experts who will be deep diving into those viral moments, unforgettable campaigns, and changing behaviors, whilst also trying to look into their crystal ball to help shape your 2025 strategies. But first, let me quickly introduce myself and do some housekeeping just while people are coming into the Zoom. I am Laura Crosby, and I'm the Field Marketing Manager at Sprout Social on Team International, and my pronouns are she, her. This session is being recorded, and as the audience, your cameras will be turned off and your microphones will be muted. However, this doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you guys. So please drop any questions you may have in the Q&A or the chat box, and we will be sure to get to as many as possible in the Q&A portion of the webinar, which will be at the end. However, before we dive in, I just want to give a quick reminder to please be mindful of your language in the chat and the Q&A. We love to keep things respectful around here as our panelists are real people sharing their expertise, and we're here to create a positive and inclusive environment for everybody. So thank you very much for understanding on that one. So without further ado, let's get into it. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce our esteemed panel, Melo Misha Jones, Head of Social, Influence and Creators at Accenture Song, Tamika Bazil, Senior Social Media Manager at Elevate Labs, and Tom Sweeney, Global VP of Influencer at Brain Labs. Thank you all so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And can we quickly get just a short intro to yourself so our audience can get to know you just a little bit better? Melo, let's start with you.
Amazing. Thank you, Laura. So as Laura said, I'm Melo. I head up social media at Accenture Song and I lead the division there. So before this, I actually worked client side for around 10 years, leading social media for brands like Lidl and also the Nestle portfolio. So I worked on the beverages brands there. And now I'm super proud to head up the social division at Song. This year, I've also had the honour of being a TikTok judge for their TikTok Awards, which was amazing. And I'm also a massive Charlie XCX fan. So be prepared for some brat trend forecasting today. I absolutely love her. So that will definitely be a part of the session.
Tamika, do you want to go next?
Yes, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Tamika Bazil. I am the Senior Social Media Manager at Elevate Labs, overseeing the platforms for both Elevate app and Balance app. I'm super excited to be here today. I have been a social strategist for a little over 8 years now, and have had the extreme privilege of working with some incredible brands such as Nissan, Prime Video, Glenfiddich, and even more. So I'm excited to really look into my crystal ball today and get an understanding of what might be happening next year, based off of the almost extremely random things that we saw happen in the social space this year. So I'm excited to get into it.
And last but certainly not least, Tom, do you want to take it away?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Tom. I look after influencer and organic social at Brain Labs. My background is very much like probably the nerdiest you could maybe even ever get, in that I have worked in the games industry and in gaming and esports for a very long time before kind of moving to like the world of agency side social media and influencer marketing, which has been fun. So now I work on the opposite of gaming, which is fashion, beauty, and everything in between. So it's yeah, very much out of my wheelhouse for the last 3 years, but I'm learning quickly. So I'd be delighted to share some beauty trends, but probably some gaming ones as well.
Love it. Thanks so much, guys. So let's get going with these questions. And I'll start with an easy one that's ever so slightly spicy, just to go in at the deep end, let's say. Which social media trends did you absolutely love and which were your least favorite? Tamika, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, I think this year was incredible when it came to trends, right? Like we definitely saw quite a lot of very different trends come up. And we saw brands very expertly hop on them. But my favorite trend would 100% have to be the demure trend, like bar none, hands down. And it was like a shooting star, right? It came and left almost as quickly. But I think it was one that made everyone feel really seen. It was easy to hop onto, but most importantly, it gave a lot of visibility to the creator, Jules LeBron, who is of a marginalized identity, who has been creating for years. And her story was that she actually was going to stop creating. And she did that video just kind of like a flighty in the car kind of thing. And that is the video that ended up taking off. And trends with that much love and heart and soul, especially on the creator side, will always 100% be the best to me. So
100% love that. Tom, what about you?
I think there's an interesting parallel, right? Like with all of the content that I've loved this year. Tamika, you made a really nice point. Like there's this like kind of wholesome vibe and a really nice journey that people get to go on social media. And the thing that I've loved so much this year has been Hope Core. I think like historically, social media has maybe been a little bit of a negative space at times, but you see a lot of maybe a bit depressing content. And I think as an antidote to that, the trend of Hope Core just exploded. It's very inspirational, but you get loads of funny comments. So it's kind of very meta and tongue in cheek, and the social audience really get it. It's about building each other up, sharing inspirational stories or speeches with like these really big graphics. I love the fact that it's kind of for social media audiences, so it's kind of a bit meta. Like it's an inside joke, but it's also really nice and very inspiring. So it's super wholesome. I just absolutely love it. So that's definitely been my favorite trend of probably the last year, but certainly ties into that for sure.
So nice. I agree. I kind of love like an inside joke that's happy and positive. It
Exactly,
makes the internet a very nice place to be.
which is
Uh,
rare.
it is exactly. Melo, what about you? Last but not
Um,
least.
Oh, I'm going to be greedy. I'm going to say two. Is that okay? I'm going to go for two.
Absolutely.
I think one builds off absolutely what Tom has just said around the fact that I feel like there's a real shift from aspiration to authenticity on the platforms, and we're seeing that within the trend cycle. I think personally, my favorite trend this year has to actually be the de-influencing movement. I think finally we're seeing a moment where we're celebrating not buying things, but actually celebrating everyday kind of life and absolutely just living, which I think has been amazing. And I've got somebody that I used to work with called Andrea Ray, and she has kind of launched a TikTok account, which is all about her Thursday evenings, where she basically goes to Waitrose, has a bath, and cooks an amazing plate of pasta. And it's so wholesome. She posts it every Thursday. I love it. And that for me personally, because I'm on a bit of a wellness journey, has definitely been my favourite trend. And professionally, my highlight has definitely been the rise of niche communities this year. And I will talk about it later. But we've absolutely seen subcultures thrive this year, from queer collectives to really hyper specific hobbyist groups. And this is where platforms are shining, giving a real space for unique voices to grow and for brands to engage in authentic, meaningful ways. So I've got two there: de-influencing, but also the rise of these communities for me has been bang on number one.
Love it. I know we've all been very nice here, but we haven't touched on any of our least favorite trends. And I know we might be playing it safe because it's the start of the webinar, but if anybody is willing to throw their hat in the ring and share their least favorite trend, let's dive into those. Whoever wants to take this one first is more than welcome to. Tom looks hesitant. Melo, you're not on mute. Do you wanna take this one?
My least favourite trend. There's been quite a lot of them actually. I can't say one that I have really not liked. I think more of a trend within the industry is the rise of AI content. I think for me, that has been something that I think there is going to be a real role for AI generated content, but I've seen a lot of it done badly this year. And I think for me, I'm really concerned about what that's doing for the platforms and the content that we're seeing through. So I think probably the trend for me this year that I haven't particularly engaged with is that.
That's fair.
Yeah. Look, I will share mine. I'm reticent to do so because I am reticent to do so
you got
because
to do it, Tom.
I know. Look, I think that for the most part, brands don't really have a right to play with most trends. And one of the trends I found most unbearable this year were trends that brands were trying to build for themselves. So the Gen Z wrote our marketing script,
Oh,
or our
yeah.
intern wrote
Yeah.
this.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I just find that like I wonder if, and I'm probably speaking to the congregation here. I'm preaching to the congregation because we're all going to be social media obsessed people. If you're on this webinar, everyone on this panel is social media obsessed, and so I find it quite patronizing
Yes.
that there's like this obviously not Gen Z person writing this kind of thing, and then every brand having the obligatory just like false version of it. I think it really undermines what we do. And I also found it just unbearably cringy. Like it's not even funny, and it never was. And some brands did it okay, most brands didn't. And I just wish everyone would stop with the nonsense on this kind of thing.
I see a lot of people in the chat agreeing
Okay,
with you.
good. Good.
So that was a good one.
Yeah.
Tamika, do you want to throw your hat in the ring?
Yeah, snaps to that one, Tom, because yeah, it's just really undermining to everything that we do. Like we are trying to get out from under the like intern on the social media platform ideal, and then we ended up being the butt of the joke. So I'm definitely with you there. But my least favorite trend has to be anything Hawk Tuah related. It could have just not happened at all. I just don't fully understand how it caught on. I didn't think that it was impactful in any way. I didn't think that it was funny. I think it was really lowbrow. And yeah, and for some reason, like it still has not wrapped up its 15 minutes of fame, and I need that to get going.
I
Way
feel
more
like
I love
it
it.
was it was such an interesting trend because it kind of it was so lowbrow that I think people found it so accessible, and it just meant
Yeah,
that people would like it became part of people's vernacular for like a little
yeah,
while, where I would
Yeah.
go out with my friends and they'd be saying it and I'd be going, what? Like
never
that's
saw
not
it
really
coming.
like that's not really something I thought would make it out of social media. I thought
Yeah. Oh
that's a
yeah.
funny video, that's so silly, and then we leave it. But it just kind of exploded. Yeah, really strange, but interesting.
100%. And I can see the chat is in full agreement with you. So thanks guys for making me get a little bit hot and bothered about whether this is okay. But I think the wholehearted agreement goes to show it absolutely is. So thank you for being totally honest on that first question. On a similar train of thought, what social media moments or trends from this year do you think will go down in history or stick in people's minds, and we'll look back on this social media trend in 2024 and go, wow, wasn't that like epic? Mello, you penned an article about social media trends earlier this year, so I'd love to hear from
I
you on this.
did.
And I think I know what your answer is going to be.
I feel like I should be wearing a green jumper or a green shirt for this webinar. For me, it's Pop Girl Summer. That for me this year was just iconic. From Chapel Roan to Sabrina Carpenter and to my OG Charlie XCX for Brat. I just thought it was an absolute masterclass in turning fan culture into a mainstream phenomenon this year. It was incredible. I actually went to see her in Birmingham in the UK just a couple of days ago, and it was the best gig I've ever seen. I mean, I think for me, what started as like a celebration of like rebellious, free-spirited attitude and a celebration of the left field, which I'm definitely a community of, for me became a defining moment of 2024 super authentic, super impactful, and absolutely will go down in history. I absolutely see myself as a 70-year-old listening to the Brat album and having real nostalgia about it. And I'm here for it. So it's got to be Brat. I'm sorry. It's Brat.
Don't be
I think
sorry.
that was like the defining one of the year, wasn't it? Like
Yeah, it's got to be. It's got to
we
be.
at Brain Labs, and one of the kind of the ways that we talk about trends are that they start as we talk about them as ripples, waves, or tides. And every movement starts with this like little ripple, and it'll be and it's only when they gain enough traction they kind of move on to the next stage. So all these trends that you see, like these, we call them popcorn trends, like these ones that are just like fleeting and snackable, they're the ripples, and not all of them have sufficient momentum behind them to become waves. And those waves only so often become culturally impactful tides. And I think it was really interesting to see this full circle moment with like Brat and all of the kind of pop explosion of this year, where it started as music and these artists were leveraging social so well. They then kind of gained so much momentum behind particularly Brat that it wasn't just a wave, it suddenly became a cultural phenomena, to the point that it was like in Camilla's like her vernacular. It was like a really amazing thing we saw. I think this was a movement probably before Charlie had even really
100%.
launched Brat. And it was, for instance, you saw MAC Cosmetics this year do an amazing campaign with Paris Hilton and a few other like kind of 90s, 2000s icons, I reckon, where they were really kind of celebrating the fact that you didn't have to be perfect, and you didn't have to be you could really just express yourself and live whatever life you wanted to. And I think it was quite an empowering time, which I really, really loved. So yeah, I think it's just this, it was explosive, this moment. So yeah, Brat probably takes it for me as well. Although I've got my own thoughts on like Chat GPT generated content, particularly because it just spammed my LinkedIn for, well, it still is actually.
I think to your point, Tom, I think what's been amazing about this masterclass is that Charlie XCX has always been in the left field. So, she's always had such an incredible fan base, and her fans have always come first. And what she's been able to do is be able to absolutely get that into the mainstream. But also, as it started to die out, Brat Summer's over, we're in Broughton or Brinter or whatever we want to call it, you know. What's been amazing is she's still nurturing that fan base. That fan base love her more than ever. And I think brands could learn a lot from this. It's all about putting fans first. And I think, yeah, I absolutely agree. I think the way that she's rose that trend cycle is brilliant.
Tamika, what about you? What do you think is the trend or the social media moment that'll go down in history?
Honestly, I would have to say all of the different faces of AI will definitely go down in history. I feel like people either fall on two different sides, one of two sides when it comes to AI. Either you're deathly afraid of it and you think that like it's going to become sentient, and you see it everywhere, right? It's in the Oxford commas, it's in the M dashes. Like now we can't use any of those or rocket emojis because it's written by AI. Or you're on the other side of it, where you are overusing it or misusing it. And we are seeing a huge influx of AI generated content that quite literally has no soul. And I find that AI is an incredible, incredible resource, but only for the people who truly know how to use it. It is not supposed to replace our creativity as humans. It's not supposed to replace what we like can bring to it. And this year, I feel like was the first year that we are going to see we saw a lot of tug of war when it came to AI. Should it be around? Shouldn't it be around? And I think in 2025, we have to start talking more intentionally about the role of AI in social media, and really illustrating how best to use it, because the common person just does not know. And so this is a trend I definitely would love to see evolve over time, because it needs to.
Totally. And that's actually a really nice segue into my next question, which is about 2024 and 2025. How did you see people consuming social media this year, and was it different to previous years? And how do you think it will be different in 2025 and maybe even beyond? And to sort of group this with the next question, which is, what did you see brands doing differently this year and that we'll continue to see more of next year? And I appreciate this will probably have some very long answers. They're both very big questions. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because I think the two go hand in hand quite nicely. Tom, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, look, I think in probably in 2024, what I think stood out to me the most was it's kind of tied to the point we were making before, actually, where I think social and culture are blending very, very quickly to the point that you can see musical tastes adapting unbelievably fast, like electronic music, dance music, sound system, reggae, those kinds of things are like just up and coming, and they've literally blown up out of nowhere. Well, I say out of nowhere, they've always been popular genres, but they've become more and more like culturally impactful and relevant. And I think what I'm seeing is that is this there's this desire for the kind of excitement and the thrill of going out, self-expression, all of those kinds of things. It's tied to the Brat Summer. It's tied to the love of pop. It's the love of dancing, electronic music. I think those are like kind of themes that I keep seeing because people are so desperate for like that self-expression. So in my mind, the 2024 trends that we'll keep seeing is that things will become increasingly soundtracked. Like people will want the next Brat Summer album. They will want the next like soundtrack to that specific moment. And I think that's going to be really, really clear. Like I was looking at the chat as we were discussing then, and people were like listing Beyonce songs. And I think that increasingly there's almost this like cadence that's coming where it will be just soundtrack after soundtrack after soundtrack. And what that leads me to is this point around in the next year, I think what the kind of lead on from that from 2024 will be is that people are looking for a sense of comfort, excitement, and positivity from social media. So they want to be able to express themselves freely. They want to be able to kind of share their stories. They want to be able to dance and hear those amazing sounds. And I think that's a really big deal. So I think that's something that we need to bear in mind as marketers as well, actually, is like probably our content is going to have to become much more positive. And I think probably one of the things that I've been talking about within our business is like, what do you do in the 2025 world of the changes in politics and all of these kind of global events we're seeing across the world right now? What are we expecting to happen, and what as marketers, how do we respond to that? And my thinking is probably that we're going to have to. I think probably the theme of 2025 is going to be cute, just nice, happy. Let's just be nice. That's what I'd like to do.
Oh, I love how hopeful that is.
I'm not sure it's going to manifest, but I'm just hoping for it.
Speak it and it will come.
Yeah.
Tamika, what about you?
Yeah, I think honestly, my thoughts are a really great, extension of Tom's thoughts. We have seen a lot of intersectional cultures come up in the social space, right? And a big focus of that has been music and language. And we've seen language transcend social media, right? Like now we're using a lot of what we would consider like social media terminology in our day-to-day language. And we're seeing kids create their own social media language to the point where parents are like, we don't know what they're talking about. Like, what is Skibbity Toilet? And this is a big part of the direction that social media is going in, because before, influence and influencers were something that they only really existed in the social space, right? We really only got on Instagram and TikTok to interact with our influencers. And now we are seeing an extension, both brands and creators having IRL events that are extensions of the communities that they have created on socials. And those communities are steeped in the language and in the music that they are using to create that community and to build that brand. And that is exceptional in so many ways. ways. It is changing how we see mainstream culture, which in my opinion, can be both a good and bad thing. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about this later, but there are definitely pros and cons to going in that direction. But I am very intrigued to see how we, especially the ones who run these brands, will navigate a lot of that shifting culture and a lot of that shifting of mainstream culture next year.
Totally.
I think it's really interesting, Tamika. So a year ago, the New York Times posted an article. The title was "Why Culture Has Come to a Standstill," and they attribute social media to that. And that was, I think it was October 2023 that came out. And it's really interesting now that just within 12 months, we're now talking about social media as a driver of culture. And I think we're in a really interesting space with it.
100%. Mello, do you want to continue your train of thought with
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm going to build from Tom's point around how social media is becoming politicized and how I feel that that is now impacting user behavior on the platforms. I'm not going to mention politics today, but I think for me, thank you. But I think for me, what we've started to see in 2024 and 2025 play out is the fragmentation of social usage. So the average user uses around 7 to 8 social platforms per week, which is crazy if you think about it. But when I add up all the different platforms I use, I'm like, okay, yeah, cool, I absolutely use that. But what we're starting to see is large communities start to splinter out into smaller, more local communities. So we now have platforms like Blue Sky, obviously, that's seen huge growth over the past couple of weeks, Mastodon, and also we're seeing more localized platforms come into the mainstream, such as Germany's Zing, which is their LinkedIn platform that they've got as well. And I think what people really want to go to is they really want to speak to their people in their own communities and spaces. And I think we're going to see that trend continue. As a former social media manager, I remember how tough it was to create content for just 2 platforms, right? I think you had Facebook and Instagram 10 years ago when I was creating content. And now brands are going to have to keep up with 7 or 8 different platforms, and it's going to be really exhausting. So for me, it really means that brands are going to need to invest in either more specialized teams to really understand how they play on these platforms and what they do, or we're going to have to really think about our strategy and go, where do I think I can actually impact these communities meaningfully? And I think brands are going to have to do things quite differently in that space to really understand how they're going to be able to connect in such a fragmented landscape.
100%. And this is such a good segue into my next question, actually, because I think if you think about like 7 or 8, and then, could that grow to 10? And then
absolutely.
How the heck is social media managers going to cope with it all, especially with the pace at which content is being churned out? And like I said in the intro, how quickly trends come and go, which brings me on to my next question of how can social media managers play to their strengths in 2025 to engage and keep up with this pace and trends, and kind of operate in a way that isn't super overwhelming? Tamika, with your social media management experience, I'd love to hear your tips and tricks first.
Yeah, so I am a huge proponent of letting social media managers know that they do not have to be chronically online, right? Like, we are allowed to have specializations. We're allowed to have platform specializations where we know that this is our bread and butter. This is where a majority of our education and our focus and our skill is in, and we're continuously cultivating our skills in that specific platform. And I say that with a caveat, also knowing that I am chronically online. So it's one of those things where it's like, do as I say, not as I do, because it's a really hard line not to step over, right? Like, we work in social media during the day, but we also use social media as a form of entertainment, as a form of unwinding. It's very difficult to really be able to separate ourselves in that way. So my biggest piece of advice to social media managers, or maybe 2 biggest pieces of advice to social media managers, is one, definitely get a general knowledge of the platforms, especially as new ones pop up, right? Like, you don't want to be completely uninformed, but you also don't have to dive headfirst into becoming an expert in that platform. Allowing platforms to evolve over time is very important. For example, Blue Sky just hit the waves over the last few weeks. Everybody is running towards it. I spent the last 2.5 years in Web3, and Web3 was using Blue Sky from like earlier last year, when we started experiencing a lot of issues with being on Twitter and being in the Web3 space, right? So different communities and different like subsects are discovering these platforms at different times. You don't have to lean so heavily into them to where you create overwhelm for yourself, because these platforms still need a lot of time to evolve and develop and become a mainstream platform overall. And two, honestly, maybe even more important than my first piece of advice, is definitely learning how to segment your social media use, whether it is having different devices, creating completely different accounts. It is so important for us to be able to disconnect from our day-to-day work, and to be able to have devices that are solely for our entertainment. I'm a big proponent of social media managers not using their own personal devices for work, logging into brand accounts and things of that nature. If we don't create those strict boundaries for ourselves, it leads to an element of overwhelm that I feel like a lot of our colleagues and our counterparts don't experience, because we are constantly enmeshed in this world. So that would have to be two of my biggest pieces of advice when it comes to this.
I think you've made a really good point there, Tamika. Like around, I've kind of gamified your piece of advice around having separate devices, to the point that for me, what I do when I work on a new client is I have a fake TikTok account that I will use to understand my audience. So I'm, for some bizarre reason, not the audience for a lot of Estee Lauder products, although I probably need them considering the state of my skin. But I think I need to get into the psyche of audiences, and so I'd create a fake account on my TikTok channel or my TikTok app, where I will pretend to be the ideal customer for any of the brands I work with. I comment, I like, I share different pieces of content that I think that person would want to see, and the algorithm will feed me with content that kind of it thinks that that character wants to see, and so I kind of learn to trust the algorithm. But there is a really interesting point around that, which I think I wasn't worried about this a few weeks ago, but increasingly I'm becoming worried about it. And I think my concern is that of all of the things that I'm seeing right now, the signals tell us that the only things that perform well are the loud things. And so to be loud and to be provocative and divisive, to go back to your point, Mela, around fragmentation of social media, like channels or audiences are fragmenting, like you say, you've got these subcultures and sub communities like popping up. You've got people from all different viewpoints and walks of life kind of forming these little micro universes on social. And I think Blue Sky is a great example where a lot of kind of more liberal leaning people have chosen to leave X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, to find something new, because it was too distracting, because the things that get reach on these platforms are the loudest things. And it doesn't matter whether you agree or disagree, you're more likely to engage or watch something that makes you feel it or elicits an emotion, right? So if you are angry about something, you watch it, you comment on it, you share it with your friends, and you go, I hate this. And the algorithms do not care. They want your time and they want your attention, and they do it really, really well because it suits them to monetize that. So platforms, by virtue of being powered by algorithms now, have figured out that the loud thing, the divisive thing, is the thing that's going to get the reach and engagement, and it suits everyone to show that, except for you and your mental health. And so I'm a little bit nervous about that right now, and I think we have to be very mindful of that as marketers. We also have to be mindful of that as social media consumers as well, and to make sure that we have those critical thinking skills and that we can put our emotions aside and not necessarily react immediately to everything we see, to take a breath. And I think that's a really, really big deal. So yeah, I think that's kind of my follow-on piece of advice is like, it's horrid out there, but there are some really amazing bits of content. And if I was going to give any, in fact, the piece of client advice I'm giving out right now, and I think one of the big themes in the first half of 2025 is because it's going to be really hard to do loud as a brand, i.e. you can't be divisive in 2025 because of all of politics and life. You have to do creative.
Yeah.
And so I would love to see brands not following trends next year. Like I want to see that decline, because everyone is, now that we have, if you think about the fate, I'm going on a bit, so stop me and jump in if anyone wants to, but there have been three phases of social media so far. The first one was this kind of, let's just post anything and it gets reach because the platforms want us and the audience is there. So it was like the free reach era. Everyone's happy. Brands get addicted, they start paying. And the only way to get organic reach was to trend jack, right? Like you had to follow a trend, get on a hashtag, get picked up, and then you get your free reach, or you had to pay for it. The stakes have been like, the table stakes are there, which is you just, right now, you either have to do a trend, you have to pay for it, or you have to do something like completely unexpected, and maybe that works. We are entering a new era of fragmentation. And I think it's community and creativity are the two key pieces here. The community bit, it's about choosing who you want to connect with, what they are passionate about, what they love, and how do you elicit a positive emotion in them. And the second is creativity, because I think the phrase I use is safe is invisible on social media. And if you're not doing, I'm not saying you have to be unsafe for your brand. I'm just saying don't take the safe bet with the piece of content you're doing. Like do something different. And that's the kind of thing that could start the next trend. And I would absolutely love to see brands doing more of that. It requires greater investment. It requires all of these things, but it's the same thing we've always wanted. But I think it's more pressing than ever, because if you do the same thing as everyone else, you're going to get the same outcome.
Mello, what are your
Amazing,
thoughts?
Tom. Just to build on your point, Tom, I think, the reason why we've been in this era of trend jacking is because the limitations in reporting that we have, right? So as social media managers, we report to our CMOs with reach and engagement, and we'll have our monthly or quarterly reporting cycles. And what that basically enables is us wanting just to drive engagement and reach, right? But realistically, why we're here is we need to drive impact. That's brand impact or commercial impact. And when you go to a boardroom, people speak about that impact in a very different way than we do as social media managers. We're talking about uplifts in brand, we're talking about cultural resonance, we're talking about commercial figures here. And I think for me, going into next year, I think social media managers really need to be reviewing their reporting, and that will absolutely then impact their strategy and what they want to achieve on those platforms. And I think when people start to understand that trend jacking does not mean brand resonance, trend jacking does not mean cultural impact, and trend jacking does not mean commercial impact, then people will start listening. I think to be able, absolutely, as you've said, to generate that next year, you really need to be thinking niche. You need to be thinking subcultures, communities, and how you can meaningfully impact those spaces. Brands do not own social media, communities of people do, and we need to fully understand that. And for me, I think trend jacking is out. And I all want to make a pledge on this webinar for us all to not trend jack. Only do it if it's right for your brand and right for your brand DNA. And some brands, absolutely, it's right for them to do it. So Hellman's just did a fantastic activation for Brat. Again, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. If anybody remembers the TikTok that Charlie did about her Brat Tour poster, and it was a bag, and Hellman's basically decided to go to the tour and actually hand out sandwiches in that branded bag. And it was absolutely iconic this week. Huge amount of talkability about it, but that felt right for the brand to do. It felt right for Hellman's to do that. What was so brilliant about it is they really truly understood the subculture they were playing with, and that's why it worked. So I think for next year, social media managers, it is absolutely looking at how you can deliver impact. Trend jacking isn't that way, and if you're going to do it, make sure it's right for your brand or your identity.
I did a talk a couple of years ago called Nobody Reads Your Fucking Social Media Report. So I apologize for swearing, but that was the title. It's a proper noun. It's a proper noun.
I
But
agree.
it's,
I agree with that.
but it was, and nobody does. And I've sat in so many boardrooms and like leadership meetings where I've been specifically told where someone's referenced a social media report and they said, oh, in this social media report that we said this, and they've said, we don't read that. We just want to know the headlines. We read the executive summary.
Yes.
And I think the really cool thing is the only time a CMO, CEO really cares is where it makes ultimately it makes a commercial impact.
Yeah.
And I think
100%.
as social media practitioners, we do get lost in the metrics that matter to us. And what we've often failed to do, and this is the ceiling that I see so many people making in their careers. This is the one piece of career advice I would give to anyone, is being able to speak the language of the leadership team and connect what you do
Absolutely.
to their motivators. And it really does, you can see so many people struggling in their careers because they go, well, I'm the best at social media. And I'm like, yeah, that's great, but people don't care because no one's reading the report that's you congratulating yourself. All they want to see is that being picked up by brand equity? Is that being picked up by search? Is that being picked up by conversions? And I think the crucial part here is, how do you draw a parallel between the metrics in your social media report and the metrics that matter? So yeah, Melo, I think that is such a great point. And I think one for everybody to like tattoo on themselves is, no one is reading your report, so connect it. And that will do wonders for your career. It will also do wonders for your business. And I think that's one definitely to take away.
100%. And I think there are times when I've worked client side where, you have your CMO and they go, why are we not jumping on this trend? Because they see all the other brands weighed in. And I think what I would kind of, my advice for people would be is to really understand why you aren't doing that, what your strategy is. So you can absolutely communicate it to senior leadership if they do pressure you around the fact that, your brand account hasn't jumped on Brat Summer, because it's not right. And I think when you have a clear strategy in place and also a clear reporting framework in place, then you can absolutely answer those questions and push back if you need to.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And to kind of go back to what you were saying about, showing up as a brand authentically, I really think there was a lot of like commoditization of trends. Like you said, Hellman's and the Brat, the sandwich bag was like absolutely perfect. And I really think the audience would be interested to know, like in 2025 and beyond, how can brands authentically tap into a trend or a partnership without it sort of seeming too commercialized, I would say. Like obviously we love Demure, we love Jules, but she was like very business savvy in terms of like getting brand partnerships with the likes of Verizon. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on like how a brand can, or how somebody, a social media manager or like an influencer manager, can really tap into like a brand or a creator in an authentic way. Tamika, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, I think that is there's so many different kind of layers to that question, because, just piggybacking off of what Melo and Tom were talking about earlier, there are a lot of ways that brands have done this well, right? And not ultimately commoditizing the trend, but instead just kind of being a part of the trend's community, versus trying to reframe it, trying to reposition it, and I think that is a big element here. But I do think in 2024, we saw a lot of ways that brands just completely missed the mark with trends, because it has to be said, a lot of trends are very culturally steeped. They have intersections that brands cannot hop on, they cannot commoditize, and they belong to the community in which they are born from. And so we are also finding that a lot of brands are just really missing the mark with hopping on trends, because as it was mentioned earlier, and I think Melo said it best, like, we are guests in the social space as brands. The space is not primed for us. It's not a space for us to be in, and it's not a space for us to commoditize. Realistically, what we should be doing as brands is finding a way to integrate creativity, and be a part of the special communities of people that also align with the audience and the consumers that we are trying to reach. But when we end up in a space where we are commoditizing trends that are steeped in cultural importance, that is using language that is not aligned with a lot of the brand's goals, or even just misappropriating trends overall, it happens a lot as well. I would love to be able to see, as Tom mentioned earlier, brands move away from utilizing trends overall. Because I think in 2025, we are going to start seeing a lot more accountability for brands for the misuse of sounds and trends. And we've already seen this in 2024. There was a creator, over 1 million followers, who called out a brand for misusing one of her sounds in their promotional content, ultimately monetizing a sound that was based off of holding brands accountable. And realistically, the research that would have been required to understand that was very minimal, right? But in the social space, we've created a foundation where we can use sounds, we can use other people's concepts, we can kind of like recreate a trend or a creative element or a type or style of content. And I don't think that that's going to fly in 2025. We even see it between creators. There is currently a lawsuit between two creators where one creator is saying that the other creator has stolen her style, down to her editing style, the color and aesthetic that she uses for her brand. And realistically, these lawsuits are going to be huge for where we see the creator economy going in the future. But I do think that this is going to be a really big wake-up call for brands and for social media managers overall, because we just cannot afford to be lazy with how we approach socials in 2025. It's a big risk to the brand, and it's a big risk to our brand safety.
Somebody clip
100%.
that for LinkedIn. That
I
was
know,
like,
it was
that
amazing.
was
So good.
unbelievable to me. That is like,
So
you've just
good.
taken that out of my mind and distilled it into the most. That was perfect. Get that on LinkedIn immediately.
I will ask our video editing team, and I will make note of that timestamp, Tom, even if it's just
Oh,
you.
amazing.
The webinar is
So
done. The
good.
webinar is done.
Yeah.
Like, that is
Over.
2025. I am obviously in full agreement. The state of social media today is that of unbelievable commoditization, right? Like, there is so many layers to this, but the audience are aware of how commoditized they are. They know how commoditized content is. They know how commoditized brands have become. And as a consequence, they know that everything they see on social media, whether they realize it or not, is an advert. They are being constantly promoted to, whether that's a political message, a product message, a message from a different community that trying to kind of shape their thoughts and feelings. They're so vigilant. And as a consequence, we have to be more responsible, as Tamika says. We also have to be more creative, because if everyone is expecting you as a brand just to jump on a trend, then that tactic no longer works, because it's not, it's expected, it's not eliciting any kind of emotional response. And there's a phrase that keeps coming up in a lot of briefs that we've been seeing over many years, and that's thumb stopping, right? We always talk about thumb stopping content. And I think what we used to think was that it had to be sensational, or it had to have a hook, or it had to have like, there was some exploit that you could do to get people to stop scrolling. And I think actually what we have to do is stop being so vapid in what we produce, just to like create something that it follows a formula. There is no formula. There is only one thing that is going to make someone stop doing something physical, and that is to provide something physical. The way you do that is to get inside their brain and you say, okay, what are the things that elicit a visceral response? So we're all out here doing this like cerebral content where we're always talking about like these trends, and you have to have insider knowledge to get it right. I don't think that's necessary anymore. I think that for 2025, what I want to see people doing is working out how you create something unexpected and emotional. And I don't mean like going to make you cry, but something that elicits an emotional response because you connect with it. And that's where community is so powerful, because if you can connect with someone on a deeper level in a genuine way, and as a brand, you're present in those spaces and you're contributing rather than extracting value. And I think that's the difference, is we have to contribute to those communities, and you have to do it in a way that people don't necessarily expect. And that promotes a visceral response. If you as I say, if you want someone to do something physical, give them something physical. Like give them the jolt where you go, wow, this brand really gets it. This brand really understands what it is to be part of this community. And I think that is the real core of what I'm gonna be taking forward into 2025. The audience is addicted to serotonin, and as a consequence, you have to do something very, very different. So I think that's the big thing. Like, if anyone's been on TikTok recently, I don't know, Mela, if you've experienced this, but on TikTok, have you seen any of the comments where people will be like, "Oh, four scrolls under this video, you'll see an
Yeah,
ad,"
yeah.
and it's literally because people have almost got into the psyche of the algorithm where it knows that was a safe piece of content that got me to engage with it, and therefore I know that there is going to be an ad within the next four scrolls because it's how the algorithm works. It feeds you something that keeps you on the platform. It shows the desired behavior, primes you to purchase something or click on something, and then the ad is displayed and it's predictable. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that, but I mean, I see it all the time.
No, yeah, I see it all the time as well. I think when I look at trend commoditization, for me, I really believe that a lot of social brands don't know who they are today. And that is why a lot of the partnerships that we're seeing coming through don't feel authentic. I think you have your kind of brand vision that you have, and then you have a social identity that you need. And the way that I speak about brands, Tom and Tamika, is I talk about it in the way that people basically follow a persona online. So I don't believe brands can be human, right? But I believe that a brand on social needs to display emotion. It doesn't just have to be funny and happy all the time. It can display a whole array of emotions. Brands that are doing it really well today are people like Liquid Death, for example, who have no brand guidelines, but every partnership that they do feels super authentic. And absolutely, they're hitting the right notes in culture because they know who their brand identity is. And I think that's really, really important. I think we've seen some amazing brands do some great partnerships this year. I think Burberry with Olivia Colman was absolutely iconic. I think Dua Lipa for YSL as well felt like a match made in heaven, but they're quite few and far between at the moment. And I think what we're starting to see is brands, again, wanting to partner with the most trending artists, but not doing their homework and not working out, is this the right partnership for me? Because I actually don't think they know what their strategy is. I don't think they know what their identity is. And I think, going forward into next year, I think for brands to really win in these spaces, they need to define who they are, what their identity is, and then the right partnership will come through because it'll be easy to see what it is. But I think a lot of brands today are still on social, really working blindly, just going, how can I jump on the latest trend? And that is not how we should be working.
It's
100%
interesting.
agree. Sorry, Tom, you go.
No, it's very interesting to the we are a juxtaposition in what we say sometimes because the brands that get the most plaudits on social media or LinkedIn or in a lot of these things are the brands that are probably some of the most trend chasing. Like we talk about Ryanair, Duolingo, we talk about Nutter
Absolutely.
Butter, Oatly, those kinds of brands.
Oh,
Like
yes.
they're and I think we get it, right? Like the reason we give them such acclaim is not because they follow trends, but it's because they are following the trends that are so closely connected
Yes.
with their brand identity. And it just so happens
100%.
that their brand allows them to play in that space.
Yeah.
Liquid Death get to do whatever the hell they want. And we go,
Yes.
wow, Liquid Death is so innovative. And one of the dangers of that mindset where we go, this brand is getting reach right now, I want that, is that you emulate their strategy.
Mm.
It does not work to be the same because, again, when I say safe is invisible, I don't mean being nice is invisible. I'm not saying brand safety is invisible. What I'm saying is if you think there is a formula, if you think there is a thing you can replicate, you are trying to be safe. You're trying to hack it. It does not work and you will be invisible. It is as simple as that. Like you have to do something different, creative, and you have to allow your brand identity to sing. We do this exercise with brands where we say to them, imagine Mello, Tamika, Laura, like imagine you are a brand, you're standing on a table in a bar and you are drunk out of your mind. What is the one characteristic that people go away from that bar telling their friends? I saw Laura today, I saw Mello today, and they
Totally.
were X. What is your X? What is your one factor of your brand that
Yeah.
people would remember if you were dialed up to 11? And how do you then connect the trends, the content, the creators to that characteristic to make people remember, connect, and build a relationship with you? And that's how you find the communities, the influencers, the trends, the content that you need to be talking on. I think it's as a thought experiment, unbelievably simple. As a marketer, unbelievably complicated. And I've made my
Yeah.
entire career on this point. But it's why we are all here, is because this group has got very good at doing that for our clients.
Yeah,
Totally.
I have to ring in here as well, right? And because I really want to be able to give social media managers their flowers, because I don't think I can really only count on one hand how often that I have been brought onto a team as a strategist. And this even happens with major brands, where the first thing I will ask for is, okay, what is your brand strategy? Is there a brand guideline somewhere? Like, what is your brand voice? Have you fleshed this out? And many brands have not. And so I want to recognize that a lot of social media managers and a lot of social media professionals are starting at a deficit, right? Because they are being
Absolutely.
asked to define the brand as they represent it in a public space, online, live. And that also creates a dichotomy where a lot of social media managers in particular, their voice is what defines the brand. So then when you're going from one professional to another, the brand doesn't necessarily have a idea of who they are in the social space. There is no concrete understanding of how they should be representing themselves, which is why they are hopping on trends, which is why it seems like as if they're trying everything, versus having a concrete strategy that they can move forward in, because they do not have a defined brand presence. So
Yeah.
I want to be able to point that out, because I know there's probably quite a few people who are in the chat right now who are like, I have never been set up for success in this area. And
Oh
so
yeah.
when I leave the account, it ends up looking very different for the next person and then the next person after that, because they are bringing themselves to the content.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like having a key strategy in place and like having, I know Liquid Death don't have guidelines, but having that sort of like vision of what you want the brand to be, I think is really important. And it's something that you've all spoke a lot about. And I am just going to do a shameless plug right now for Sprout. So consider this the ad break. And please do drop in the chat if you're a Sprout customer and you use social listening in particular, because we have a really great sort of example of listening to your audience and staying true to your brand from one of our customers, Papa John's. I'm sure you all know they are a pizza company. They used our social listening tool to figure out that Jason Kelce was actually raving about their pizza on social media. And this is something that was picked up within Sprout by using, like I said, the social listening tool. I've used it myself. It's really cool to be able to see like sort of the narrative that is going on around like the product or your brand. And it meant, and I know we kind of said that engagement was a vanity metric, but it's something that we all kind of do still look at. And the engagement increase that they saw from picking up on this, reaching out to him, doing a collab with him and his wife, and a video talking about their kids and what pizzas they liked. Like my colleague is dropping in a link in the chat as we speak to the case study. Like the increase in engagement was out of this world. And it really goes to show that like picking up on an authentic, real, like partnership where Jason adored their pizza and then they did an ad. Like it just makes so much more sense to the audience. And like you said, Tom, earlier, the consumer is like beyond savvy now when you see a partnership with a brand and a creator where you're like, you don't like those things. Like we are so much more like in tune to that than we ever have been. So showing up authentically, and I know the authentic was the buzzword of 2024, but it really does ring true. And I think it's something we'll see a lot more of in 2025. And I just want to say, I know we are getting very close to the top of the hour. So I'm going to ask the guys one more question. And then if we can stick around for the Q&A just after the hour, that is great. We've got loads of audience questions to get through. So if the audience has the time to stick around, that'd be fab. But if not, we will be sending out the recording to everybody on this webinar. So without further ado, this last one is a biggie. And I really want you to look into your crystal balls here, guys. But what do you think the social media landscape will look like next year? And what big shifts do you think are on the horizon? And Mello, do you want to take this one first?
So for me, it's got to be AI generated content. I think, we spoke about it a little bit through this, but I think if you have seen the platform updates that came out a couple of weeks ago, every single platform now has an integrated AI production tool, which is crazy. And an estimated 60% of all social content that we're consuming today is now AI generated, which is absolutely mental. Um, I think it's super exciting to see, and I'm of the excited camp. I'm not at the doom and gloom camp. But what I am really concerned about next year is the quality of content that we're going to start to see, because it's going to be so easy for anybody to create content. But it's really, let's be honest, it's going to end up being wallpaper. And our feeds are just going to be absolutely spammed by AI content. So I think we've talked about it a little bit through this, but for marketers and for brand and social media managers, for me, the focus is all about creativity next year. I think AI is a brilliant tool, but you've got to have human creativity driving that. And I think the best campaigns this year, and I think the best campaigns that we'll see next year as well, creativity will be at the heart of it. So for me, that's the big shift. I think we all do need to be creative, but I think in the wake of AI and what is happening and the way the platforms are engaging with it, creativity for me will be the ultimate differentiator in 2025.
Love that. I'm massively supportive of that, creativity being the big differentiator for sure. AI to me is like it's miscast as artificial intelligence, and it should be about augmenting your intelligence instead. There is AI is not creative. It predicts what the next logical word in a sequence should be. Like if you want to really understand AI, just go and like watch a video about like how the algorithms work within it, like the machine learning things work. And it's changed my perspective on AI, because it's literally there to take what has come before and predict what is likely to come next. And it means that only humans have the ability to come up with genuine creative thought. But Mello said it quite perfectly, which is that it's there to support the production, the output, the outcome. And I think that's the right way to approach it. I think from my point of view, what we're going to see coming up is increasingly is that there is going to be a mood shift in the new year across the social space. And that's why the human touch is so important now, that sensitive creativity. And I think brands need to be very sensitive in the first months of next year with the US political changes coming. And I think the language that people will use will change as a consequence of that, to the point that I think brands need to be more confident in the wordings that they're using. I think they need to become clearer on their own framing of conversations, and just be aware that being silent and being neutral is in itself a taking a stand. It is, you are not supporting something or not saying something is in turn just as good as, like you're taking a side. Just be aware of that. And that may be the effective strategy. I'm not going to preach about politics, but I just want to be really clear that silence is very loud on social media. So expect that, but also expect that you will see a greater polarization of social media and a greater entrenchment of community. And as a consequence, you as a brand need to connect with those communities today to take advantage of that in the new year, because it's going to become increasingly hard to get into those spaces.
Absolutely. Tamika, you're next.
Tom, that was fabulous. There are so many things that I think will evolve in 2025. On the creator economy side, the rise of B2B creators, especially on LinkedIn, it is so incredible to see. I think just overall, the shift in the creator economy to really having creators that hit in different sectors is going to be absolutely fantastic. This year alone on LinkedIn, we saw so many different types of creative partnerships, from SaaS creative partnerships to conferences, to partnerships with brands like Sprout Social. And it has been amazing to see. Even retail brands are on LinkedIn now, which is absolutely amazing. And just being able to focus on the rise of what creators might look like in professional spaces is definitely very intriguing for me. I think on the lifestyle side for creators, especially in the creator economy, I think we're also going to start to see a shift in the increase of spam accounts. Because I think people are really, really itching for just more authentic content. And I know we use that word a lot. And I know we want to label every piece of content that comes into the social space as authentic, because it feels that way. But in my opinion, the shift to authentic content is going to be completely lo-fi, no production, facing the camera, just talking to it, very minimal editing, no cuts type of content. And we're already starting to see many creators kind of shift in that direction right now, because the whole concept of content creation is exhausting. It's exhausting for brands, it's exhausting for social media managers, it's exhausting for creators. And we're definitely going to start to see a very big change in how folks approach that, because everyone is tired. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that as well. And lastly, for my brands, and especially for the social pros behind them, I'm really excited to see brands just let go just a little bit, right? Like just unbutton one button on the top of your shirt. And I think we saw that like this year with Dunkin's Halloween campaign, right? It was just very cute, tongue in cheek, right? It did not play with their brand safety, but it was very culturally relevant. Like, this is the internet, right? People want funny, people want a little bit risque, people do not want safe. And the ability for their social team to find a good intersection in between that brand safety and still being culturally relevant and accepted in the social space was absolutely amazing. And I really hope more brands kind of take heed, and really just one button off of the top of the shirt, right? And just let things fly just a little bit. And trust your social teams. They know what's going on in the social streets, as I like to call them. They see the communication that's happening, and really being able to allow them to take their creative scope and run with it is going to be a really big change that I'd like to see.
Totally. Well, I know we've all had a lot to say, including myself. I think that's the most I've spoke on hosting a webinar. But I've got time for one question from the audience. I'm so sorry to everybody. We've taken note of your questions, and they were absolutely hot off the press and really brilliant. But one of the questions that loads and loads and loads of people were asking was about B2B trends. And in particular, how do B2B brands show up in these trend-orientated spaces? Any thoughts on trends or advice for how B2B brands can push social more? If you could give a rapid fire answer to that, that would be amazing.
Yeah, so I have to run soon, so I'm just gonna throw something out there. But I'm also thinking about just a B2B overall visibility for my brand right now. So this is something that's top of mind. But I think educational content and content that highlights the voice of the brand and what the brand represents and what they are trying to do in their space is very important here. There are quite a few brands that are doing spaces like LinkedIn very well, and that is because they are not just talking about their successes as a brand, they're intentionally highlighting and cracking open all of the things that they are doing on the back end to show up in a way that aligns with their brand presence and brand strategy. So if you are a B2B brand, it is important that you start to look a little bit about how do you educate on your sector? Who are you speaking to? How do you let the consumer know why your product, why your goal, why your mission, why your position is important, and educate them around the nuance around that. I find that the concept of educational content it tends to be a lot more general, right? And it tends to like to stay safe and point directly to the product. When in reality, people need to fully understand, how will this product contribute to my life? Why should I want to connect with this brand in particular? It's like when you go to a bread aisle in a supermarket. There are tons of different types of bread. But usually you go with a brand that you are more knowledgeable about or that you're more used to. So your goal in the B2B space is to increase that loyalty to your brand versus positioning your product or your service in an insane amount of ways. So that is really where I would stand with that. Because when it comes to businesses wanting to work with another business, they want to ensure that there's synergy between how the businesses show up, and that their brand will be safe within that business and within that brand's loyalty. And that is where your content should focus.
Mello or Tom, do you have any thoughts on that question as well?
I think I'll go quickly because I'm conscious of time, but I think two things. Everything that we've said today still applies to B2B brands. I think the fact that, you really need to have a clear strategy, you need to understand where you're playing culturally as a brand, applies for B2B as well as B2C. And I think that's really important. I think what's really interesting about B2B brands now is that they are no longer just seeing LinkedIn as their domain. There are some absolutely fantastic B2B accounts on TikTok. SEMrush is one of my favorite ones at the moment. It's absolutely fantastic. And what they're doing is they're really playing into trends. But again, they've identified and defined who their audience is. And then they have absolutely gone after the sub-communities and the cultures that they want to have a meaningful connection in and a meaningful voice in. So I think for me, for B2B brands, it really is take the advice that we've given today. I think the same applies. But also don't feel like you have shackles on your brand because you're a B2B brand. You can absolutely play, you can absolutely have humor. And that would be my advice, definitely.
Yeah, just as a final note, the B2B buyer is a human. So talk to them like you would, maybe not as fully as you would a B2C brand, but number one, the biggest thing I think as a hack of someone who's been sold to a million times, as a budget holder, the thing I like the most is where someone connects with me as a human and understands my challenges, and being able to talk quite honestly about what those challenges may be, I think in your comms is really important. And the truth is, de-risking your offering in B2B is often one of the most effective and important things you can do. In that nobody ever got fired for buying IBM still rings true today. And nobody ever got fired for buying Sprout Social because it's such a great tool. But it's also I think crucially, like if you're going to be the new kid on the block or you're presenting an alternative solution, you have to de-risk that. And people's motivation for the most part is survival first and then a claim after. So solve their needs, understand what the challenges are and address those in all of your social content, and then go and have fun by connecting to that person and building a relationship with them. And I think that's the gold of all of this.
What a wonderful note to end on. And I 100% agree. We've most certainly ran out of time. In fact, we ran over on time. And thank you so much, guys. Like, it's been amazing. Like, the audience has absolutely loved everything that you've had to say. And to our audience, thank you for sticking around, those that have joined us till the very, very end. And a friendly reminder that we'll send out the recording to everybody on email over the next few days. And have a wonderful holiday season, everybody. And we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks,
Bye,
guys. Bye.